This video has been rated CR for counter-racist.
If I ask you which candidate you're going to be supporting?
Kerry.
John Kerry?
Yeah.
Okay. Just for the record, is that candidate a white person? Is John Kerry a white
Yes,
person?
it is.
And are you a white person?
I am.
Okay. What is that presidential candidate's stance on race? To the best of your knowledge.
Well, I watched the debates the other night. To the best of my knowledge, he's, very much for everybody. I mean, he wants to see black people, Asian people, Hispanic people succeed.
Right.
I think it's for everybody. I mean, I don't know, but I think.
Specifically, by what I mean is by the candidate's stance on race is, do you know whether the specific candidate, John Kerry, practices racism? Meaning, does he mistreat people on the basis of color in all of the areas of people activity, including education, economics, labor, law, politics?
I don't know for sure, but I don't know of any mistreatment. I haven't heard of any mistreatment.
Okay.
So.
All right. So your answer is I don't know.
Right.
If you don't know if John Kerry practices racism, then why do you support it?
Because I agree with his policies more on education, jobs, the economy. I don't think we should be in Iraq. Yada yada yada.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Where he is leaning,
George Bush. Yeah.
George Bush, if we talked about him, would be when we had the affirmative action up at the Supreme Court. His government actually wrote a support to have that practice thrown out, and they could have done nothing,
Right.
but they took a position,
Right.
I think, to support some of their base core voters, and they must have felt that they would get a benefit out of taking that position.
Okay.
But they clearly lost.
The decision, you mean? The
Yes,
Supreme Court decision?
in the Supreme Court.
Yeah. And just for the record, what is affirmative action? What is
In this situation, it dealt with a treatment of applicants of color that would, without necessarily going into a quota arrangement, but would allow certain points to be added to their record for whatever biases they had to fight, you could say, in their growing up.
Right.
That's the way I
That's
understand.
how you understand
Yes, that's the way I understand.
Okay. So you can tell if a white person is practicing racism against a non-white person by some of the code words they say. Is that correct?
I would sometimes it's very blatant, of course.
Right.
But I think in other situations, people may be just keeping a little bit to themselves, but you can still.
What constructive advice can you give to me as a non-white person as to what to look for, and more specifically, how do white people practice racism in those subtle ways that you're talking about in this specific area? Like since we're talking about politics.
I would think that you would be much better at
Yeah.
figuring that out.
And I'm
than
not.
I would, but
Yeah, I have no clue.
Often, since I said that would be somewhat disguised or not that put up that blatantly, the remarks would then be made when there are no people to offend around, no people of color.
Okay.
In that situation, a person might feel more relaxed to make certain remarks.
Right.
So what I'm saying is that in certain environments, certain situations, that may, when they're not on guard, that may show more easily than.
Right.
You couldn't. I mean, that you could not observe because you would.
Right.
Your presence would prevent that.
Okay. Have you ever been in that type of situation, and how can you tell a white person is practicing racism? How can you tell?
I could not say that I have. I've been closely observing or seeing a person that is actually practicing racism.
Okay.
It's a little more subtle. It may be that they're making remarks that I would feel uncomfortable about.
Okay.
Now there's a distinction here because there's also a matter of sometimes you are joking about a serious matter.
Right.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a racist or that you would practice.
Right.
I could, not as a general rule, but I could go along with a joke or a comment that might make a caricature of a person of color.
Okay.
Without that necessarily meaning that now we're in and supporting racism or discrimination.
Okay. All right.
So I think there's a lot to listen for and many nuances.
Right. But there's no way that I can tell as a non-white person if somebody that's a white person is practicing racism in a subtle way.
I think
in a subtle way.
What are the code words?
Yeah, like what sort of words are the power words, code words? Can you think of any specifically?
That's a little. I think that's a little hard. It's like you know it when you see it, you know it when you hear it.
Right.
If we were dealing with some examples, I could probably be of more help.
Okay, but you don't have any examples of how somebody practices racism.
If you asked me if I knew a person that I would say this person is definitely a practicing racist,
right,
I would probably have even some problem telling you that I know of a convicted, practicing, thorough racist. I'm not trying to
I'm
polish
confused.
my halo,
Yeah.
but it would also offend me.
Okay.
So I'm not looking for that type of company.
Okay. All right.
I have where I come closest to people that I have to be rather careful here. a member of the local Rotary Club,
Right.
and which consists of a broad range of people from the business community, typically mature, a little older generation.
Are these white people?
No, not all of them. The former president was a black person. I worked with him as I was his treasurer, so we had a very good relationship. But you can hear that some people would have a rather conservative bias, and in that connection, a few comments, without being directly racist, they might give you an indication of a strong conservatism, but it's I would say, to my surprise, actually, that I only observed that very few times.
Okay.
And generally, people were very open and very inclusive, and actually wanted to expand the membership.
Right.
Whenever we had a visitor from overseas, one of the first questions was always, "Do you have women in your club?" So I did generally experience a desire to be open and inclusive. And I think if I would, where I would suspect that detect any serious types of racism, that goes towards the more conservative, maybe. And I come from Denmark, so the Danes often look at themselves as rather liberal and they're not discriminating, but they certainly, as a society, they have their problems getting used to. It used to be a very homogeneous society, white only,
Right.
and getting used to integrating different people, different cultural backgrounds, but also different racial backgrounds. And in Denmark, I could spot, I would say, a few people who would have their biased opinions.
Well, thank you very much for the interview. I really appreciate your time. What's your name?
My name is Leif.
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 Okay.
Like Leif Erikson.
Right.
But I pronounce it Leif.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Good luck with your program.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.